what you're thinking.
Are we ready to roll? Are we on? Oh, good. I suppose you wonder why I called you all here today. There should be, I have to warn you, I'm a dangerously overeducated medical power nerd. And what I'm going to do is take you through an array of serial stunt science adventures and innovations that I've been working on ever since medical school. My background is in physics, math, philosophy, neuroscience, and medicine. And then they threatened me with employment, and I got involved in civil-military interaction, which is a clear thing. But there is a theme through this. It might be just between me and the voices, but I'll try to get through it. First of all, when I was in medical school, I came from the physics world, and I wanted, to say, put your heart into the program. And I was looking at how could we take this new technology, these sensor technologies. This is about 25 years ago, by the way. And instead of like studying for exams, I would go to the LA basin and hang out with all the aerospace power nerds that were building space stations. And I learned about computational fluid dynamics and all sorts of sensors. And then I went into the cardiology department, and I saw them doing their little squiggly line with the heartbeats. I thought, wow, we can fix this. And so, little did I know. So what I did is actually put a bunch of electrodes on my chest and then took the data, and this is actually 2 heartbeats instead of just the squiggly lines. Now, this is the first lesson I learned. It's hard to teach old gods new tricks. So they were not really receptive. That's not what a heartbeat looks like. Apparently a heartbeat looks like a squiggly line from a pen tracing, so I moved on. I can move faster than memos can stop me. So I zoomed over to the rehabilitation department, and I said, well, let's take these electrodes off from diagnostics, and let's look at muscle, eye, and brain activity to put onto quadriplegics to empower them to communicate with the outside world. And we would hack into gaming interfaces and have kids that were doing exercises. They weren't really motivated, but you know what? When all of a sudden they could make Mario go left or right with their muscles, they would exercise for hours. They didn't want to do their therapy, but they would exercise for hours. So I felt so guilty. Back one. This is a crystal earwood. This is a C1 quadriplegic. And is that moving automatically, or am I doing that? Trying to go backwards here. She's a C1 quad, and basically in a wheelchair. Her neck was broken at birth, never taken a breath on her own, and we were able to get a bunch of us sort of power nerd folks, put electrodes on her face and her brain, and actually give her the ability to, and this is going to work. I keep pushing buttons till something happens. Basically, with her facial muscles, again, this is someone who's never done anything with their hands. She saw virtual reality, she wanted to interact, and on a 486, a program called Fourth, we were able to give her the ability to use her facial muscles to navigate around, pick up objects, and move things, and become a participant in the cyberculture. And I did a whole bunch of those kinds of things, but I also found out that I graduated. And so I asked my board of advisors what I should do. And they say, obviously, you're not being challenged, as I got my MD and my PhD. And so they said, you need to work in a more complex environment. Well, medicine's pretty complex. And then they came up with this, you need to go to the CMOC. Like, what's a CMOC? Well, it turns out a CMOC is a Civil Military Operations Center. And I thought they said my career would end in disaster. What they said was I was going to work in disaster relief. And because I did have a former military background sometime in my history, and I'm fluent in nerd speak, med speak, mil speak, com speak, etc., they said, why don't you go and learn how to actually hang out with the people doing these things. So I stepped in when people learned that collaboration was important, and we had collaboration systems, and we had the ability for people to share information. Here's actually UN people sitting down with the military, collaborating, sharing information. And I made an observation. Even though most of them were speaking some form of English, they actually weren't communicating. We were working on a refugee camp problem, and even though they all had the same data using the same words, it became very clear to me that they were in fact not actually sharing that same information. So I remembered that thing that I'd done in medical school where I changed the way we saw data. I said, let's play a game with donuts. or toroids, or bagels if you're from the Northeast. And let's say the refugee camp is the center circle, and that food, water, fuel, power, and security are the rings around the ring. And red is bad, blue is good, big is more, small is less, transparent's not important, solid's important. And what we found was, when we made an objective 3D abstract graphic, all of a sudden, people had the ability to share more precisely. I know it's really counterintuitive, but that's the way it worked. So I declared victory, as one always needs to do. It's actually a bad move on my part. And then I was challenged more, saying, well, if we can do that to these guys, what if we were able to go into public health and take all the handheld devices and all the portable communications, start collecting all the data, so this tsunami of data is coming in. What if we could actually use that to create a whole new way to see complexity? Because everywhere you go, things are complex, but you know what? If you're a human standing sort of near the surface of the planet and you kind of understand shapes and structures, it does sound abstract, but we've taught people to learn it. Lesson learned number 2, don't mouth off to the 3-star. So as I said, sir, we solved the problem. The future went that way. Next thing I know, I'm in Afghanistan doing assessments for reconstruction projects. Like, note to self, don't mouth off to the 3-star, learn lesson. Yeah, usually by the time they figure out I'm not the janitor, it's too late. So, as I was looking at this project and this reconstruction, what I saw was that nice little sign that was out in front that said they'd finished the hospital reconstruction, and PRT is a provincial reconstruction team. It's a military group and State Department, and there's some other NGOs, and I was there to see the success. So I looked, and I could see new pipes, and then down in the pipe I saw something that looked really, actually pretty suboptimal. And that's like, wow, that looks like blood formed from a pipe and out of a hospital. And then as I looked down a little bit farther, I saw actually kids playing in the cistern. I'm like, okay, you've reached my limit. I am not happy. And so I went and I just ripped on to the doctor that was in charge of the hospital and said, how can you let this happen? And he let me talk. And then he said, here's what happened. The military came out, used their own contractors, worked on their own process. They can't come out very often because of security. They've never been back. We've complained about this, and the contractor said, pretty much, screw you, it's on your own, because we don't have the contract to do this. Like, wow. So I went to the provincial reconstruction team, like, hey guys, saw your work at the hospital. Yeah, it's really good. It's like, so what's up with the blood coming out of the walls? You know? And, you know, and they're like, oh, those Afghans are, you know, using the drain wrong. Like, all right, time out. I'm a doctor. What drain of fluids from a hospital is okay to put in a puddle of water where kids are playing? Because I couldn't think of a single drain, you know, to use wrong, blaming the victim. And then they'd actually given them the septic tank truck, and they said, well, why aren't they using this? So I went back and asked them. So here's a septic tank truck, nice American flag on the side, and nice sign that says gift from the American people. And I said, well, why don't you use this? You know, okay, it's kind of screwed up, but he's like, I can't start the truck. What do you mean you can't start the truck? Because, well, they didn't give me the crank start to start the truck. No kidding, really, really. They actually delivered a non-functional septic tank truck to a teaching hospital in a war zone and declared it a success. Lesson number 3, adding the sludge of bureaucracy to the fog of war is no way to win the peace. So I was like, all right, I need a drink. Or a lot of them. And so then everywhere you go in disaster, no matter what disaster you're at, no matter how far you think you're forward, there's always a watering hole. There's always a group where people get together, and these are people working on the ground. And, you know, they said, you know what, if we had communications, we could be more effective. So then time happened and some magic, and next thing I know, 18 years of college, 2 doctorates, and I end up taking over a bar in an Islamic country in a war zone. Something about disaster and career path, I'm pretty sure I missed. But I thought, wow, this is pretty interesting, because first of all, I'm way outside the wire, and it's too scary for people to come monitor what I'm doing. So I basically got the Defense Department, you know, Darth Vader of my thunder, to give us an inflatable satellite dish, and I had the fastest unblocked internet in the country, because it turns out the NGOs were not funding internet because it was seen as a luxury. It's like, I guess air was a luxury too, I don't know. And with that, I also got the Office of, actually some Intel folks and spooky people, to actually CIA, MIT, NSF, a fab lab in Jalalabad. And that inflatable satellite dish, high-end, high-tech, this thing here, this is cut-out wood, stapled, or this is MIT Fab Lab folks, and with a $100 Linksys router, I can now take that internet and go 10 kilometers and shoot it down somewhere else. Like, I just weaponized the internet. So then I set up this operational experimentation cell. I said, wow, now I have a place where we can try things. So we got the one laptop per child. And I said, look, here we have a place. We have access to humans. We can get outside the wire. We can iterate. We can share what we're doing. And it's not one laptop per child. It's one laptop per prayer rug in this case, which was kind of obvious for us. But you know what? The kids got a little mad at us. They're like, why are you giving us these toys? It's like, I'm sure it's going to go somewhere. Here we are. And it wasn't until we actually wiped off the software on those laptops, gave them an internet browser, and then brought some other humans over to show them that these were actually ways for they could access the internet, that this was their way to move forward. And same thing with the NGOs. Now we had internet at the bar, and I put up the first cyber bar in eastern Afghanistan. Amazing what a marketing ploy that was. But they weren't sharing. So I thought, okay, this is time for some innovation. This was during the surge, so we did a Santa surge. Nobody saw that one coming. But in order to actually make progress, I got this innovative idea. I said, arms for hostages, not so much. Beer for data. So I put a little sign up. So the Saturday Strike Force says beer for data. And I put a 1 terabyte drive on the bar. And I said, if you share any folder of data, we will actually give you a beer. And they're like, you guys are spies. Like, yes, but this is beer. And holy crap, you would not imagine the amount of information we have. I have terabytes of information from all the different NGOs over the years, and it's a long story and more beers involved. But what we began to get was ground truth. What's actually going on the ground? And I could actually see development projects from different agencies and put them together and make maps and visualize what was actually happening. So I went back to DOD. I said, hey, Darth. I said, Darth, sir, things are getting worse. And I got this, Dr. Warner, anytime something follows Dr. Warner, I know it's going to be bad. It's like, what are your metrics? I was like, well, number of roads I could go on, kilometers, and they're like, we don't care about that. So I said, okay, military, let's speak in terms you do understand. So at the end of every trip, and I've been 20 sometimes, I would ask, anybody got any weapons? Remember, we're in an NGO guest house. And so as the things progress, the kilograms of weaponry on my bed are directly proportional to the instability in the area. And that's my new metric, because that's a military metric, and that's actually something they can understand. The blast radius of my bed is directly proportional to instability. So finally got their attention. However, that's when everybody decided that it was time to evacuate Afghanistan. I said, but wait, we got it. We're making progress. Let me put an array of solar-powered computer labs and internet along the border, so at least we can give access to the people that need it while we're bailing. And remember those kids I showed you that we taught? Here they are. This is just a few months ago, it's about a year ago now, setting up their own satellite dish and solar power on a school in the border areas in very contested areas, and they're moving forward. That's because we've empowered them. And the kind of data that we're getting from this is we now know about the specific villages, how stable they are, how things are going. It's actually quite a phenomenal success. I would share more, but there are some security issues about this. If you don't go, you don't know. And I'm going.